Blog Talk Radio.
The cycle of tyranny, from liberty to complacency, from complacency to dependency, from dependency to tyranny, from tyranny to revolution, from revolution back to liberty.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Lori's Talk News Radio. This is Tuesday, August 28th, 2012. I'm your host. Lori's my name. This evening I thought I'd get into even how I got into some of these subject matters, excuse me, which will then tie into the subject matter this evening. When I first started looking into this stuff, you'd hear these things about two governments, or, you know, you don't really own your land or your car, or these types of things, and you're going, what are these idiots talking about? Well, you look into them, lo and behold, you start finding out there's a lot of truth to this. And so you dig a little more, and you dig, and it's interesting because I've never particularly cared for law or history, either one, but I kept being pushed, kept being motivated to look into these issues. I could not figure out why. But I kept plugging away, found a lot of interesting stuff. And then one day a pastor that I listened to, and I'll give him a plug here if he wants it or not, his name's Pastor Butch Paul out of West Virginia. He's a real fire and brimstone type of pastor, which I appreciate. We need more of them in this country, but nonetheless. And he had gotten a book. I don't remember if it was a friend that gave it to him or his wife or what. And he was reading from this book, and he mentioned the name of it, and it's called The Institute of Biblical Law. He was just reading. He hadn't read the book at the time, and he was just reading a couple of things out of the introduction, which is what I'd like to do this evening. And the reason this was kind of a turning point for me is because I think, like a lot of people, we tend to, or at least I did, you know, you kind of put religion over in this area and law and government over here like they're two unrelated groups. And that's what I thought for a long time. Well, after I heard him read some of these out of this book, I quickly realized that indeed they're not. So anyway, I thought I'd read a couple here. I hope my volume's going to be okay, because I may have to turn my head to read, but I will try. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, I did open up a chat room this evening, which I normally don't do, but I put it there so I could put a link to this book if anybody's interested, because I was fascinated by what he was reading. I had to get the book myself. So anyway, if some of it seems disjointed, it's because it's a fairly long introduction, and I'm trying to get just some key parts, but here goes. Here in Section 2, or whatever you want to call it, the law is revelation treaty. It says, law is in every culture religious in origin, because law governs man and society, because it establishes and declares the meaning of justice and righteousness. Law is inescapably religious in that it establishes in practical fashion the ultimate concern of a culture. Accordingly, a fundamental and necessary premise in any and every study of law must be, first, a recognition of the religious nature of law. Second, it must be recognized that in any culture, the source of law is the God of that society. If law has its source in man's reason, then reason is the God of that society. If the source is of an oligarchy, or in the court, senate, or ruler, then that source is the God of that government. Thus, in Greek culture, law was essentially a religious, humanistic concept. And then I skipped here a bit. Modern humanism, the religion of the state, locates law in the state and thus makes the state or the people as they find expression in the state, the God of the system. As Mao Zedong said, our God is none other than the masses of the Chinese people. In Western culture, law has steadily moved away from God to the people, or state, as its source. Although the historic power and vitality of the West has been in biblical faith and law. Third, in any society, any change of law is an explicit or implicit change of religion. Nothing more clearly reveals, in fact, the religious change in a society than a legal revolution. When the legal foundation shifts from biblical law to humanism, it means that society now draws its vitality and power from humanism, not from Christian theism. Fourth, no disestablishment of religion as such is possible in any society. A church can be disestablished and a particular religion can be supplanted by another, but the change is simply to another religion. Since the foundations of law are inescapably religious, no society exists without a religious foundation or without a law system which codifies the morality of its religion. Fifth, there can be no tolerance in a law system for another religion. Toleration is a device used to introduce a new law system as a prelude to a new intolerance. Legal positivism, a humanistic faith, has been savage in its hostility to the biblical law system and has claimed to be an open system. But Cohen, by no means was a Christian, has aptly described the logical positivists as nihilists and their faith as nihilistic absolutism. Every law system must maintain its existence by hostility to every other law system and to alien religious foundations, or else it commits suicide. Oh, let me see, turn the page. Okay, here we go. This is kind of in the middle of something because I'm having to jump a bit, but that's all right. Talking about Calvin, John Calvin, and some thoughts he had, but that's what I'll pick up. Calvin favored, quote-unquote, the common law of nations. But the common law of nations in his day was biblical law. Although extensively denatured by Roman law, and this common law of nations was increasingly evidencing a new religion, humanism. Calvin wanted the establishment of the Christian religion. He could not have it. Wait a minute. Calvin wanted the establishment of the Christian religion. He could not have it, nor could it last long in Geneva without biblical law. Two Reformed scholars in writing of the state declare, it is to be God's servant for our welfare. It must exercise justice, and it has the power of the sword. Yet these men follow Calvin in rejecting biblical law for the common law of nations. But can the state of God's servants and bypass God's law? And if the state must exercise justice, how is justice defined? By the nations or by God? There are as many ideas of justice as there are religions. The question then is, what law for the state? Shall it be positive law, the law of nations, or relativistic law? And I'm not even going to try to say these names, a couple of German names, I think I'll butcher them. But these two guys, after calling for justice in the state, declares, a static legislation valid for all times is an impossibility. Indeed. Then what about the commandment, biblical legislation, if you please, thou shalt not kill, and thou shalt not steal? Are they not intended to be valid for all time and in every civil order? By abandoning biblical law, these Protestant theologians end up in a moral and legal relativism. Roman Catholic scholars offer natural law. The origins of this concept are in Roman law and religion. For the Bible, there is no law in nature because nature is fallen and cannot be normative. Moreover, the source of law is not nature but God. There is no law in nature, but a law over nature, God's law. Neither positive law nor natural law can reflect more than the sin and apostasy of man. Revealed law is the need and privilege of Christian society. It is the only means whereby man can fulfill his creation mandate of exercising dominion under God. Apart from revealed law, man cannot claim to be under God, but only in rebellion against God. In this section number 3, the direction of law. In order to understand biblical law, it is necessary to understand also certain basic characteristics of that law. First, certain broad premise or principles are declared. These are declarations of basic law. The Ten Commandments give us such declarations. The Ten Commandments are not therefore laws among laws, but are the basic laws, of which the various laws are specific examples. An example of such basic law in Exodus 20:15, thou shalt not steal. In analyzing this commandment, thou shalt not steal, it is important to note that A, this is the establishment positively of private property, even as negatively it punishes offenses against property. The commandments thus establish and protect the basic area of life. But B, even more important, this establishment of property issues not from the state or man, but from the sovereign and omnipotent God. The commandments all have their origin in God, who, as the sovereign Lord, issues the law to govern his realm. Further, it follows, C, since God issues the law, that any offense against the law is an offense against God, whether the law has reference to property, person, family, labor, capital, church, state, or anything else. Its first frame of reference is to God. In essence, law-breaking is entirely against God, since everything and every person is his creation. But David declared with reference to his act of adultery and murder, against thee only have I sinned, and done this evil in thy sight, Psalms 51:4. This means that D, the lawlessness, is also sin, i.e., that any civil, familial, however you say that word, family, ecclesiastical, or other social act of disobedience is also a religious offense, useless, unless the disobedience is required by the prior obedience to God. With this in mind, the law first lays down broad and basic principles. So let us examine the second characteristics of biblical law, namely that the major portions of the law is case law, i.e., the illustration of the basic principles in terms of specific cases. These specific cases are often illustrations of the extent of the application of law, that is, by citing a minimal type of case law, the necessary jurisdictions of the law are revealed. To prevent us from having any excuse for failing to understand and utilize this concept, the Bible gives us its own interpretation of such law, and the illustration being given by St. Paul makes it clear the New Testament undergirding of the law. We cite, therefore, the first basic principle, second, the case law, and third, the Pauline declaration of the application of law. Now, that's all the further I'm going to get into right here, right now. Some of these, and I'm going back now because some of these actually sound very, very foreign to I think what a lot of us think and have been taught and that type of thing. And the first part of this, though, that I read about the law being a reflection of a society's religion and morals, just absolutely shocked me. I'd never heard of such a thing. I'd never considered such a thing. And yet, when I got pondering it, I'm going, well, you know, that really is. I mean, this is why you don't commit murder. You don't steal from people. You don't this and that. And they're based on the religious beliefs and the corresponding moral values of a society. And then when it went on, and it was talking, oh, here we go. Here we go. Every law system must maintain its existence by hostility to every other law system and to alienate religious foundations or else it commits suicide. Now, I think there was a little bit, oh, here we go. I'll go up a little bit further. Fifth, there can be no toleration in a law system for another religion. Toleration is a device used to introduce a new law system as a prelude to a new intolerance. Legal positivism, a humanistic faith, has been savage in its hostility to the biblical law system and has claimed to be an open system. And then that's when it goes on and says nihilist and on and on. But this is very interesting because this is one of the things we're facing today. We hear it all over. Most notably, it has been in places like England and France, and it's getting to take place here in this country as well. And that is with Muslims and this Sharia law. Now, I'm not going to sit here and get into a debate at this particular point in time as to if Islam is true or not, or this or that. That's not the purpose of this radio show. But the purpose is, the point that I'm trying to is that with respect to law systems, the law system this country was founded on was indeed biblical principles. And that's easily provable. People want to get in and, oh, well, you know, George Washington was a Mason and Benjamin Franklin belonged to the Hellfire Club and blah, 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 blah. And that all's true. But when you look at the actual writings, you can go back to the Mayflower Compact. I mean, there's no doubt that this country was founded on biblical principles. We have 10 Commandments strewn all over the country. Those haven't been removed yet. We have statues, even in the Justice Building, that type of thing. So anybody wants to get into that with, you know, it's not. And then you hear this with, oh, well, separation of church and state. Well, it's kind of amazing. I've actually run into a few people because they cite that, and when they don't even know where it comes from. I've actually told people, I say, you know, it doesn't appear in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, or anything. They cock their head like a mule at a new gate, and they have no idea where it comes from. And that's maybe for another show to get into the history where that comes from. But that does not appear any place in any of those documents. In fact, I've got enough time. I'll just do real quick thing on that. That actually appears in a letter from Thomas Jefferson to a Baptist preacher, and he was talking about the First Amendment and how it erected a wall of separation of church and state. And what he was doing, there were a lot of people concerned about a state religion being mandated. Keep in mind, it just came from England, where you belonged to the Church of England, and before that, the Roman Catholic Church, where you got burned at the stake and that type of thing. They did not want that. And he was putting his friend, this Baptist pastor's mind at ease by telling him that this is a wall of separation, that the state cannot mandate a religion. It was not freedom from religion. It was freedom of religion. Big old difference. But as I said, that's kind of another story. But where I was going with this is that this country was founded on biblical principles, and when we have another religious system move in, that's not to say you can't be another religion. That was purposely why things were written the way they were. But when people come in, they live under laws that are founded in biblical principle. And so what the Muslims are doing now, they're trying to bring in, have indeed brought in England and France, and they are having major, major problems there, as well as other parts of the country. And we're starting to have them here where they want to have their own court system, their own Sharia law. So if, you're a man and you beat your wife, which is allowed in Islam, they want to say, well, I want to be tried in a Sharia court, Sharia law court, because under Sharia law that's allowed. Well, that's just sidestepping and circumventing our law, and it is wreaking all kinds of havoc in the places that have allowed that. And that is exactly what is happening in this country now. We already have places up in Michigan where these people are starting to have their own court system. There are places cops won't go. And again, this isn't beat up Muslims, not that I couldn't, that's a different show. But with the court systems, they are incompatible. And that is what he is saying in here in this book at the very end that I was reading, if I can find it again. Well, I can't find where I just read it, but it was talking about that you can't have two different law forms like that because they end up getting into conflict. And that example I used with wife beating is just a simple example. I mean, there's many, many others. Polygamy. That's another one of those areas where you have incompatible belief systems and corresponding laws. And if you have those, one has to yield. It's just all there is to it. It doesn't matter whose belief is right or wrong for purposes of this conversation. What you end up with is an issue where you have two competing law forms and you do not have a cohesive law system. So hopefully I got that point out without getting into other areas that I really didn't want to get into. I'm going to open up the mic here and see if anybody's got any questions. So I'll open it up to the call board here. Were there any questions or comments on what I said or needs for clarification? Did that make sense, what I was trying to explain?
It did for me. This is Teresa.
Oh, okay. Hi, Teresa. How are you this evening?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how exactly to word that because, like I say, I'm not trying to get into this, Christians good, Muslim bad. That's not the point that I'm trying to do, and I hope I made that clear. But did I explain it okay then? That it's about law form and how you can't have them compatible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because when I first read some of those comments in there in that book, you kind of, whoa, wait, I think a lot of people, I know I did, you just kind of drudge through life and, I guess if history or law is your thing, fine, but I think for most of us, just trying to eke out a day in and day out living, we just really don't give law much thought. We, get a little nervous when the cop's behind us, going to pull us over, and but to give any real thought, I never did. Emma, did you ever really think much about law? Just day in and day out type of stuff?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I didn't either, and it just, when you start looking at some of these things, it's just really kind of interesting when you hear these, how strange they can sound, but then when you start looking at them, it's kind of true. So anyway, when I realized how inextricably linked religion and morals are with the law, it all made sense to me. Because before I realized that, I could not understand why I was being motivated and pushed along to delve into this otherwise boring and mundane and tedious and just hellish subject. So for me, it was kind of helpful to understand those were inextricably linked, and that was the purpose of this call, this show this evening. So that's all I really had. Looks like I got about 3.5 minutes or something. That's about all I wanted to get out. So, Teresa, if you've got any thoughts or comments or whatever, and if not, I was going to actually do something else I normally don't do. Now, I'm getting out of a habit, I guess. I actually played an audio last show, and I don't normally do that. And I was reading out of a book, which I don't normally do. And I have a song that I actually want to play that's about 2 minutes and 27 seconds. So do you have any last-minute comments or questions?
Nope, not right now.
Okay. You might want to actually stay by and listen to this song. I think you'll like it. And so I'm going to play that and wind the show up, and then we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining.
Bye, Lori.
Life is like a battlefield. The enemy is out to kill. We can't let him tear the kingdom down. We're not fighting flesh and blood, but it's between the bad and good. We can't stop until the trumpet sound. This is war, not a game we're playing. This is a war. Brother, hear me what I'm saying. Pick up your sword and shield. Get on the battlefield. Satan's armies come to kill. This is war. Satan's army roams the land, seeking souls of fallen man, leaving broken homes and hearts in misery. But we must lift the mighty sword, the word spoken by the Lord. 'Cause when that devil hears the word, he's gotta flee. This is war, not a game we're playing. This is war. Brother, hear me what I'm saying. Pick up your sword and shield. Get on the battlefield. Satan's armies come to kill. This is war. This is war, not a game we're playing. This is war. Brother, hear me what I'm saying. Pick up your sword and shield. Get on the battlefield. Satan's armies come to kill. This is war. Pick up your sword and shield. Get on the battlefield. Satan's armies come to kill. This is war. This is war.
Boom.